Hello, everybody. Scott Golden with the Pro Wrestling Logic YouTube channel here, and we have the NXT review for the 5th of August 2020 on tap. It's a little bit behind, about 24 hours, a little more than that behind, but I've had a busy day. In any event, let's get into the review. One thing of note, because it is behind, I can note that the ratings are in, and AEW almost won by 150,000 viewers, 900,000 just over, to 752 or 53,000 for NXT. It's interesting to me that this is the case because I actually found the NXT show to overall be the better program. And so the fact that they are struggling in the way that they are is an indication, at least to me, that they have lost favor with their core audience, in that they are putting together reasonably decent NXT shows. They were struggling for a little bit, but the last few have been good. And still, they're that far behind, even with competition from mainstream sports. I wonder if we won't see a return for AEW to over 1 million viewers on a Wednesday night not too long from now. I think that's a reasonable expectation within the next 6 months. And NXT may need to be revamped or somehow changed. In any event, let's get into the review. We open with a number one contenders contest for the Women's Championship of NXT. Dakota Kai defeating Rhea Ripley to become that number one contender. This is the first time I can honestly say that I think Kai has impressed me, but it dawned on me as I was watching this, and I'd love your opinion. Please comment and subscribe and like below. But what dawned on me is that I think this is the first time in U.S. wrestling history that the women consistently, about maybe 6 to 8 women in the women's division across the three brands, might actually be more of an attraction in terms of character development. Maybe not athleticism, but putting together compelling storytelling matches that are better booked than the men. When I look at Dakota Kai, when I look at Rhea Ripley, when I look at Mercedes Martinez and what could be done with her, and then I look at Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, Bayley, and Sasha, I've got 7 or 8 women that I'm struggling to look at the roster and think there are the same number of men who are being positioned in the same way. I'd be interested to know what your feelings are. Are we in an era where at least women have leveled off in match quality, or there are occasions where the women are actually pulling ahead of the men? If so, congratulations to the women of professional wrestling, at least for WWE. I don't see that in other places, although I have for years felt Shimmer and Shine and other women-centric promotions have been undervalued, but this is the first time on a national stage where I actually think the women are in a lot of ways doing better than the men. Anyway, so Dakota Kai does pin Rhea Ripley after interference from Mercedes Martinez. I think Martinez is being portrayed in the right light, just a completely, no-nonsense female, and I would like to see what they do with her, perhaps giving her to Rhea Ripley in terms of the fact that Mercedes has over 20 years experience. I've actually called some of her independent matches several years ago, probably more than, probably at least 10 years ago now, if not now a little bit longer than that, but probably 15. But in any event, Mercedes, a heck of a talent. Great to see her get that opportunity for herself. And if she can pull Rhea Ripley to the next level, to the point where the powers that be put her on a main roster, and that takes a few months, that would be awesome. And again, with that win, Dakota Kai goes on to challenge Io Shirai for the championship at TakeOver, which will be a phenomenal match. Io Shirai, another woman that I didn't think of right off the bat, because I had stopped watching NXT for a little while when I was, dealing with my medical challenges, and Io's rise is something I missed and need to go back and rewatch. But certainly a heck of a match going in here. Ripley dominates the early stages of the match, but Kai doesn't take a backward step. One thing I like is that they are making sure that the women are both compelling, but also they're strong. It used to be that women's matches would be one-sided. They've become more even and start telling stories in the way that men generally have over the last 20 years, and I think that matters. Um, we see scrambling with Ripley grounding her. I think there's money in another Shayna Baszler and Rhea Ripley match on a brand somewhere down the road because I think Ripley can pull that off. Kai does some counter wrestling and actually holds her own. Gets a near fall, but she takes a lariat for her trouble. Ripley executes a delayed vertical suplex. I think this is where the announcers acknowledge Davey Boy Smith, the late British Bulldog, who made the move famous in the late 80s, early 90s. And it is a good nod to history when the announcers do something like that. Kai counters and tries to trip Ripley up, doesn't get where she wants to get with that. And we see a face first drop on the apron by Ripley. Kai kicking out of that seems a little premature, and I think they do a little bit too much with move at times. But the story in itself is usually 8 times out of 10 solid. And we see them go to picture-in-a-picture for the commercial. I don't really pay attention to the picture-in-picture things. I just find it distracting. If you're going to show a commercial, just show the commercial and get it over with. Ripley hits a series of running kicks, or Kai does, and then Ripley goes to make the comeback post the commercial break. And good fire by Rhea Ripley. She plants Kai with a facebuster for a near fall, and Kai fights back, and they trade strikes for a good bit. Ripley with a flapjack for another near fall. I don't know that Rhea Ripley needs to be this like if you're going to go with her at an eventual point, maybe having her have at least 1 or 2 strikes that can end a match immediately would be a good idea. And Ripley hits a pump handle and goes for the Riptide, and Kai counters it into a DDT, and again another kick out. Maybe they're doing a little bit too much as I look at the notes here, but again the match flow feels good and competitive for where we are in 2020. Kai is able to escape the attempted submission by Ripley from here and blocks a superplex. Kai goes off onto the apron. Kai falls back into the ring where suddenly Mercedes Martinez makes her way out. And Kai capitalizes on the fact that Mercedes interferes and is able to get the win there. Mercedes then attacks Rhea Ripley again after the bell. She hits an air raid, which is her primary finish. And there is blood as Rhea Ripley gets her nose busted open somewhere along the way. There is mini vignette with Pat McCaffrey talking to Shawn Michaels earlier in the day. I don't really care about this, but then I don't really care about the Pat McCaffrey thing either, and I'll explain why as we get to the final segment of the show where he was trotted out. Anyway, Bronson Reed, who actually has impressed me over the build to the ladder match for the North American title. I liked which I didn't report on because I've been rehabbing my shoulder, but the build to that ladder match, Reed has been really, really, placed in a way that I care about him. He reminds me of a more athletic version of Brodus Clay in body type, and I also feel like he is a guy who has a better learning curve than guys his size. He's definitely athletic. Reed does pin Thorne in a battle of former allies, and I don't know. I mean, they trade strikes early. I don't know that Shane Thorne, who really has dropped quite a bit in the last several months, is a guy who should have been able to even stand toe-to-toe with Bronson Reed. I think there's value in keeping Reed strong for the majority of his push and run. And then Reed goes to the outside after a clothesline, and there's a dive through the ropes. Again, dives with no crowd. I don't like dives anyway, but dives with no crowd to me is just goofy. They fight on the floor, and there's a full Nelson slam on the apron. Apron spots have become like the new DDT, and for a while they were cool. Now I just look at it and go, "You're shortening your career, and for what?" Thorne's back up, and they climb on to the turnbuckles. Thorne hits a Shining Wizard for near fall, and Reed makes a comeback here, hits a military press and a senton, which looks pretty nasty. Gets a 2 count out of it. Actually thought they could have ended here. They fight for a bit, and then Reed hits a second lariat, or hits a lariat of his own. Reed hits a Death Valley driver and a top rope splash, which again shows Reed as being a big guy who's really athletic. I think Vince will like that, and I think there's enough character where if it's handled correctly, the fans may like that going forward. I don't have a lot of faith when they take guys up to the main roster, but I still want to hold faith that 6 months to a year from now, when they call Reed up, he'll be handled appropriately. And he advances into, I guess, getting more ready for the North American ladder match in a few weeks. Breezango arrives earlier in the day, and they get assaulted by El Ligero de Fantasma. I don't really like this. Number one, we just saw a car angle on AEW last night, and I realized this was probably taped beforehand, and it's coincidence, but at the same time, it feels like they're just rehashing stuff. Also, I'm still not behind why fans would care one way or the other about Lucha Libre being defamed, even for heels, when for probably the last 25 years, the WWE narrative has been people shouldn't care about Lucha anyway. I guess they think that'll lead to some sort of heel heat, but I don't think it would actually work. I think you'd get indifference. I'm not talking about indifference to the men in the storyline. I think indifference to the storyline and the faction would be a problem going forward. Mackenzie Mitchell interviews Robert Stone about interfering with Mercedes Martinez. Stone says Ripley may be done with the Stone brand, but he's not done with her. We move into the goofy, and I say goofy because I hate three-ways anyway, three-way match. Damian Priest defeating Oni Lorcan and Ridge Holland in a triple threat qualifier for the NXT upcoming North American ladder match. Priest pins Lorcan, which makes me sad. I think Oni Lorcan is a guy who, if you paired him with a Timothy Thatcher, if you paired him as an understudy for Matt Riddle, if you wanted to do a faction with Drew Gulak, if you wanted to do something with a wrestler who's really good on the mat, I think you could do something with Oni Lorcan. I do feel like they're wasting him, especially here in a match where Damian Priest, who's a gimmick I don't understand. I get he has charisma, I just don't get it yet. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, but I don't get it yet, and I don't think he should have been the one to drop the fall. I understand they're pushing Ridge Holland, but I don't know enough about him either, because he's been exposed primarily on the NXT UK program, which I haven't seen enough of to be intelligent about, to where it should be the issue. I mean, the match isn't bad. Holland looks strong and doesn't take any major losses, but again, I don't know that they've done enough to transition him into the North American or the United States Canada product. For those that don't watch the UK program, and assuming that everyone does is just foolishness. Priest shines early, and he gets the best of both men. Priest squares off with Lorcan. They fight for a few minutes, and Holland comes charging back in the ring, and then we see Holland out of the ring. Lorcan leaps over with a flip dive of his own, so 2 matches and 2 dives. Holland gets to display some strength here. He tosses Larkin around like it's nothing, and then superplexed Priest, so that's actually, I think, the second superplex type spot of the show. We go to commercial, we come back, and Priest and Holland are going toe-to-toe. Lorcan hits a senton, and Lorcan follows up with a double blockbuster. Made to look pretty okay, but just his role, obviously, on this particular occasion is to be the guy to take the fall. Lorcan uses the half crab. Good homage to Lance Storm, which is at least part of where he trained. Priest gets free, but gets uppercutted for his trouble. Holland cuts off Lorcan and uses a pounce to do it. And then Holland with a gut wrench powerbomb on Priest for near fall. And then we get to the closing minutes of the match, and Lorcan goes to counter, but he's wide open for Holland to do him some damage. Priest wipes out Holland and with a choke slam. Priest then executes the Reckoning on Lorcan and gets the pinfall. I think the finish kind of at least felt like it came out of nowhere to me. So then we go to a non-title match with Keith Lee, who is your NXT Heavyweight Champion, defeating Cameron Grimes in a non-title affair. Grimes stalls and plays an old-school heel, trying to get Lee to chase him, trying to get to do the old cat and mouse thing, and Lee manhandles him at every opportunity, which makes sense. And then Grimes, who is an amazing athlete, does the upside down flip bump of Harley Race, and Grimes rams Lee into the steps, gets a momentary bit of offense there. Grimes then springboards into an Asai moonsault to the floor. Then they decide to go to commercial, which is just goofy. Lee is coming back with his comeback when we go back to the ring area. Grimes is able to avoid being spirit bombed for not too very long. And then Grimes counters the jackhammer into a small package, which was a nice bit of wrestling. I think Grimes could be more of a star, even though they want to use him as a comedy act, but I think there's more on the bone there, and hope that he gets a chance to show what he can do eventually. In any event, then we move to Lee catching Grimes with on a flying crossbody. Grimes catches a Spanish fly, which is kind of an amazing sight. Lee comes back after the attempted cave-in. Lee chops down Grimes, which is to be expected, obviously. And then we see some clotheslines, Spirit Bomb, and a decisive pin for the champion. Scarlett voiceover, Karrion Kross appears on the video screen with a message for Lee, and then he wants a title match, was the whole idea of that. William Regal announces that Dexter Lumis suffered an ankle injury and is out of the ladder match at TakeOver. Johnny Gargano and Finn Balor will be the ones to, I guess, have a singles match. And then Rich Holland hadn't lost without losing a fall. In 2 weeks' time, the three wrestlers just named and a fourth from another upcoming qualifier will face off in 2 different singles matches. The 2 winners advance to the ladder match. Why is this so goofy? It's convoluted. If you don't watch week to week, you're going to come in and go, why is this so confusing? It's silly. Anyway, El Legado de Fantasma dragged Fandango out into the arena. Where has he been for the last several minutes? And Santos Escobar says that they explain why Lucha Libre matters and is important week after week. They said to them it's not a gimmick they exploit for money and merchandise, and they see it as art. Breezango on previous episode had sported lucha masks, and it was considered disrespectful. Escobar says the disrespect stops here, and Mendoza and Wilde go in to take Fandango out even further. Tyler Breeze runs in, and he's beat down too. And then Escobar issues a warning to Isaiah Scott. This was just, again, goofy. Nobody cares about this story. And even if they did, are you really telling me that Breezango is the ones you want to get them over with? A vignette highlighting the reigns of the Undisputed Era as tag team champions is shown. And then Damian Priest and Bronson Reed have words about an upcoming singles match they're going to have. This is fine, but I mean, you're pushing two guys pretty strong. Unless you do a non-finish, which I don't think they should be doing in the war that is the AEW war, I really don't see where this is beneficial to anybody to go either way on. So your challenge becomes, if you beat Reed, then you're giving up on him too early, and I think part of his aura is the can't be touched kind of guy. Even though I'm not a fan of Priest, obviously they've been spending time building him, and so if you beat him, then you don't get ahead there either. And a non-finish during the ratings war with AEW, even though AEW does them sometimes, they don't do them nearly as much as WWE multi-brands do, and I don't think that's the way to go. So I think they've kind of painted themselves into a corner there. Then Pat McCaffrey joins the broadcast booth for guest commentary. He's making several jokes throughout. So I'll get to why in a minute, but I'm not a fan of him being a part of anything that they're doing, NXT or otherwise. So Tegan Nox defeats Indy Hartwell. Not a fan of this because it's so short and inconsequential. Nox pins Hartwell. It's just there to fill time, and it's disrespectful to both women, in all honesty. Nox shines for the majority of the match. Hartwell cuts her off short. Hartwell with a near fall after a big boot, which really doesn't matter. The announcers are focused on talking to the celebrity. Nox makes a comeback and hits a Shiniest Wizard. Next week we have another qualifier. Kushida returns to face Cameron Grimes and a mystery opponent. I don't know who the mystery would be. Hopefully it's somebody that might even pop a rating, but I don't even know who that would be at this point in any of the brands, truthfully. Anyway, we also are going to see Danny Burch with Karrion Kross next week in a singles match. So here's your main event, and Imperium, which is Marcel Bartel and Fabian Aichner, defeated Undisputed Era of Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish with Adam Cole and Roderick Strong for the Tag Team Championships. Aichner pins Fish after a distraction. A distracted Cole and McCaffrey get after it. I don't know. I mean, the match was a backdrop to the whole Cole-McCaffrey thing. I don't really have much to say about the match other than it's snug and stiff, and it's kind of disrespectful for the effort that all four guys put into the match, that they were just a backdrop to the storyline between Cole and McCaffrey. In other words, if this match was left to stand on its own, I think people would be excited about it. But to put a tag match in a main event slot on the program where you have a company that doesn't push tag teams, and then to use that as a backdrop for another story, is disrespectful to all the talents involved. I mean, the match is competitive, and McCaffrey, though, overshines everything, as he's brought to do. They do a decent little mini match with it. O'Reilly is in his first match back after several months because of the COVID situation. He squares off with Aichner, starts the match. O'Reilly and Fish are working over Bartel, and there's a blind tag by Aichner, and he nails Fish with a spine buster, which is picture perfect, well done. They cut to commercial. Fish is trying to mount a comeback when the program comes back. Cole's glaring at McCaffrey throughout. O'Reilly goes nuts after the hot tag, hits a knee drop for his trouble right onto the leg of Aichner. O'Reilly bears the knee and bar the knee, and Eichner spends time trying to get to the ropes. This is well done, and the submission style, especially with guys like Tim Thatcher and Matt Riddle and all that, you can really go in the direction of a more mat-based style if you wanted to. Not that they're going to, but the option is there. Anyway, Eichner reaches the ropes. Fish flew out with a diving headbutt off the top rope, and O'Reilly keeps applying the submission hold, telling a good story. Bartel makes the save and hits a moonsault on O'Reilly for the trouble. Cole went over to confront McCaffrey at the broadcast booth and cutting a promo telling him to shut up with his short jokes and all that. McCaffrey begs off. Cole turns to walk away, and there's another smart remark by McCaffrey, calling him an angry elf. Gee, short jokes, how awesome, not. And then Cole overhears this. He walks back to the booth and threw water in McCaffrey's face. Roderick Strong comes over to try and hold Cole back. Officials, including Shawn Michaels and Triple H, pour out from the back to separate Cole and McCaffrey, as if we're supposed to believe that the people running the show didn't know what's going on. You've plugged on social media that this non-wrestler, who, no offense, I don't follow football, so I had no clue who he is. I had to look it up. Football's not my thing. He's not a mainstream celebrity. He's decent on the mic in an Andy Kaufman sort of way, but I can't imagine for a mainstream person flipping channels that anyone's going to care about this guy. And that's my problem with the angle in general. Tell me who you're trying to attract. Like the Mike Tyson thing on AEW, just as an example. There are people that worldwide who don't follow wrestling and they know who Mike Tyson is. People that don't follow boxing that because of Punch-Out and Mike Tyson's history know who Mike Tyson is. Who knows outside of football fans who followed football, 5 years ago and who follow ESPN because he's a sports analyst, know who Pat McCaffrey is. How is that drawing buys? How is that relatable to using a celebrity well? How is that a justification for letting go of 20 talents during COVID when you've got to pay this guy, I'm sure, a bloated fee to get him to perform, unless he's altruistic and performing for free, which I highly doubt. There is absolutely no redeeming quality to this. You're taking the guy who was the former champion of the brand, and ultimately you're saying he is intimidated or mentally manipulated by a B-level former sports star? Do they not have any clue that, yes, wrestling is fake and championships don't matter? But at the same time, to a person who's flipping channels, one of the questions they're going to ask as a casual fan is, who's the champion? Oh, it used to be that guy, but he can't even handle a football player? Come on, seriously now? Anyway, I am very passionate about this, and I would love anybody to challenge this in the comments, but I don't see a redeeming quality to what they're doing here. I'm not against them using celebrities when they're used well. I'm not against them trying to get publicity if that's what they're doing. But if you're going to do it, don't fire people and then bring somebody with a bloated salary in, and certainly don't make the sacrificial lamb your former champion who held your championship for over 400 days. There are many guys on the roster you could do the same angle with. Heck, you could do it with another member of the Undisputed Era, but not the guy who carried your brand for over a year. That's just ridiculous, and it's sophomoric, and it's useless, and it doesn't help anything or anyone. In any event, that is the close of our NXT review for this week. Other than this angle, I actually thought NXT did a really good job this week, but this angle really made me go, what are they thinking? In any event, please feel free to comment, like, and do all that good stuff. Until next time, keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment.